And hello everyone, and welcome to Matt's Sports Talk Men's Basketball Episode 3. It's hard to believe this is the third episode that I've recorded on the men's side of things, recapping the games from this past Saturday, January 18th. So without further ado, let's dive into the video. Our first matchup, we will recap the Grace College Lancers, number 14 in the country, hosted Mount Vernon Nazarene. And this game came down to the nitty-gritty. Mount Vernon was down by about 15, by pretty near 20 points, went on an 18-2 run in the last few minutes of the game, and had a chance to win it at the buzzer, but a costly turnover for Mount Vernon ended that potential upset bid. Mount Vernon shot 40% from the field in this game, 34 from 3, 66 at the line. Meanwhile, for the Lancers, 45 from the field, just 10% from 3, and 62 at the free throw line. And this one, this was a really, really good game, and of course, Grace controlling the paint in this game, 44-26. And so that was the first matchup from this past Saturday. Then the next matchup, the Pilots of Bethel University traveled to Upland, Indiana to take on the Trojans of Taylor University. And the Bethel Pilots able to squeak out a win there to remain perfect in league play, 9-0 in league play, 16-3 overall. But Taylor Trojans fall to 11-8 overall, 4-5 in the Crossroads League. So the Bethel Pilots remain undefeated in conference play. Really, really remarkable what they've been able to do this year under head coach Steve Draben. The Pilots shot 48% from the field, 36 from 3, but just 57% from the free throw line. And meanwhile for Taylor shot 40 from the field, 32 from 3, 66 at the free throw line there in that one. And our next matchup, and this was a really hard-fought game in this matchup. The St. Francis Cougars traveled to Michigan to face off against the other Cougars. Well, actually, there's 3 Cougars, at least teams, in the Crossroads League: the St. Francis Cougars, the Spring Arbor Cougars, and the Mount Vernon Nazarene Cougars. So the St. Francis Cougars traveled to Michigan to face off against the Cougars of Spring Arbor. St. Francis victorious in that one, 81-79. So a really, really good game there. And St. Francis shot a blistering 60% from the field, 43 from 3, just 54% at the free throw line. And meanwhile for Spring Arbor, 41 from the field, 30 from 3, 88 at the free throw line. So that was a really, really good game, that is for sure, in Michigan. And then our next matchup, the Huntington Foresters traveled to Goshen, Indiana to face off against the Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs were looking to get their first conference win, and they were unsuccessful in doing so, as it was all Huntington from the start. Huntington winning this game by a final score of 109-60. The Huntington Foresters scoring 60 points in the second half alone. And they had a really, really good game from Lane Sparks. And Drew Goodline, a perfect 6 of 6 shooting, 5 of 5 from 3. Lane Sparks, 11 of 18 shooting, 4 of 7 from 3. Cade Brenner had a really, really good game. Brenner, 3 of 6 shooting, 2 of 5 from 3. And Huntington had a really, really good performance from a big forward who's 6'11", Roman Bruwier, and that's spelled, his last name spelled Bruwier. They also had a big game off the bench from Landon Beagle, 4 of 6 shooting, 3 of 5 from 3, but a really, really impressive performance from a 6'9" forward, Landon Jordan, who was 7 of 10 shooting, had 9 rebounds. And the Foresters shot a blistering 62 from the field, an even more blistering 65 from 3, and just 50% at the free throw line. So the free throw percentage not great, but in terms of three-point shooting, you'll definitely take over a 60% three-point shooting clip any day of the week, or any day of the weekend as well. Meanwhile, for the Maple Leafs, they shot just 40% from the field, 31 from 3, and just 38% from the free throw line. And the Maple Leafs fall to 5-14 overall and 0-9 in league play. The Foresters 15-4 overall, 5-4 in league play. And the last matchup of the game takes us to Indianapolis, where the Wildcats of Indiana Wesleyan traveled to Indianapolis to take on the Knights of Marion. Marion able to pull off the upset here, beating receiving votes Indiana Wesleyan 78-71. And Indiana Wesleyan had a really, really tough shooting game. Now, they did shoot 77% from the free throw line, which is not bad at all. But they really, really struggled from really everywhere else on the floor. 36% from the floor, 36% shooting from the floor, just 28% from three. And boy, redshirt sophomore Cademan Bontrager really put the whole team on his back. He did have 30 points, 10 rebounds, 6 of 8 from the free throw line, 11 of 16 from the field. Did make both of his three-pointers that he attempted, which is uncharacteristic to see out of him, but he can make three-pointers as well. And so the Wildcats definitely struggled in this one, but the Knights of Marion, they shot 54% from the field, 41 from three, 93% from the free throw line. They were led by Aiden Franks, who had 31 points, and Dylan Moles, boy, he had over 20 points. So you have two players contributing for over 50 points of your total of 78 that you scored. And obviously you can't do anything about that. Of course, you know, when a team gets red hot, a team gets red hot. And of course we see that in the NCAA as well. So an updated view of your men's standings at the end of the first half of conference play. You have the Pilots of Bethel, the 1 seed, 16-3 overall, 9-0 in league play. They are also a perfect 9-0 at home, and they are on a 6-game winning streak. The Grace College Lancers are solely the 2 seed right now, 15-4 overall, 7-2 in the Crossroads League. St. Francis, the 3 seed, 6-3 in league play. They are 13-6 overall. The Huntington Foresters have won 3 straight games. The Foresters now up to the number 4 spot, and in that prime position to host a home playoff game. Remember, in both the women and the men, the top 4 seeds host a home playoff game in the opening round. Now, if you're the 1 seed and you win your first 2 rounds, you then host the league championship game because you are the higher seed remaining. If you're the 2 seed, as long as you beat the 7 seed in the opening round, you would then host one final home playoff game in the second round against either the 3 or the 6. And if you're the 3 seed, if you win your first round at home, you would then go to the 2 seed in the second round. If you're the 3 seed, you would go to the 2 seed in the second round. If you beat the 6 seed in the opening round, and if the 7 seed loses to the 2 seed in the opening round, that's how that works. And then if you're the 4 seed, you get one home playoff game, you would host the 5 seed, and then in the second round, you would go to the 1 seed as long as the 1 seed beat the 8. Now, if the 8 seed had a monumental upset over the 1, then if you're the 4 seed, you would then host the second round against the 8 seed, and then either go to the 3 seed or the 2 seed for the league championship game. And obviously, it would be the same exact scenario for the 5 seed, and then of course you can probably figure out the scenarios if you're the 6, 7, or 8 as well. And now Huntington does hold the head-to-head over Spring Arbor, so that's why Huntington is up to the 4th spot right now. The Spring Arbor Cougars have lost 3 straight games. They're 13-6 overall, 5-4 in the conference, and they are the 5 seed now, courtesy of the head-to-head tiebreaker, which the Foresters of Huntington hold over the Cougars. The Taylor University Trojans are solely the 6 seed all by themselves at 11-8 overall, 4-5 in the Crossroads League. And then you get down here to the 7, 8, and 9, and you have the Knights of Marion now jumping up to the 7 seed at 3-6 in conference, 9-10 overall. Then in 8th place, you have Indiana Wesleyan, 13-6 overall, 3-6 in the Crossroads League. And then you have Mount Vernon Nazarene, which would currently be out of the playoffs right now, courtesy of the head-to-head tiebreakers. And the Mount Vernon would be seated in 9th place right now. They are 3-6 in conference, 11-8 overall. Now, one thing of note, that's one way you could look at it for that three-way tie, but on the other side of it, you would have the Knights of Marion holding the head-to-head over the Wildcats. You have the Cougars of Mount Vernon holding the head-to-head over the Knights. And you have the Wildcats of Indiana Wesleyan holding the head-to-head over Mount Vernon. So with those three teams tied for 7th, 8th, and 9th, it's kind of like, well, how do you break down that tiebreaker? Well, you would break it down into the common opponent tiebreaker first, which obviously does not break, or actually it would break with MVNU because MVNU upset St. Francis and Indiana Wesleyan lost to St. Francis. So if you wanted to get a little bit more in-depth behind the scenes, so to speak, of how to break that tiebreaker, you could argue that Mount Vernon would technically be ahead of Indiana Wesleyan because of that common opponent tiebreaker, with Mount Vernon beating St. Francis and Indiana Wesleyan losing to St. Francis. But then you would also have the Knights of Marion being behind Mount Vernon because Mount Vernon holding the head-to-head, and you would have the Knights obviously behind Mount Vernon anyway because of beating St. Francis. St. Francis, of course, beating Marion. Now, that's just in the first half of conference play. All these teams have to play the same teams again in the second half of conference, so a lot can happen. And then, of course, the Maple Leafs of Goshen, 5-14 overall, still winless in the conference at 0-9. But you look at the men's and the women's side, it is just so close. And what's crazy is you look at Indiana Wesleyan, you look at teams like Indiana Wesleyan, Mount Vernon, Marion, they're only 2 games behind Huntington and Spring Arbor for that number 4 spot in order to host a home playoff game. And you look at that and you're like, man, it's so close because I mean, obviously these games are super important. And now if you look for Indiana Wesleyan, if you look at their schedule the next 3 games, of course, they're home against Huntington. Then they're at Grace next Wednesday. Then they're home against number 10 Bethel the following Saturday on February 1st. And you look at those 3 games and you're like, okay, well, if Indiana Wesleyan can win those, at least win 2 out of those 3, and Huntington lose their next 3, and you would and Taylor lose 2 out of their next 3, and then you would have pretty much a wide open race for that number 4 spot. So Indiana Wesleyan not out of the woods yet to get that final home playoff game spot, but it's going to be close. Everybody knows it's close. But remember, Indiana Wesleyan 7-1 at home. They're 4-5 on the road. So obviously they have the home court advantage working in their favor. Their only home loss so far of the year coming to Grace. And that was a game that Indiana Wesleyan had a really good chance of winning. So, if you look at that and you say, well, can Indiana Wesleyan, are they able to, are they going to be able to win this game on Saturday? That is going to be the question. I think they can. Now, if they want a chance at that number 4 spot, then I personally think what they're going to have to do in order to get that number 4 spot is they are going to, most importantly, they're going to have to win at home against Huntington. And really, you can afford to lose to Grace, so to speak, on Wednesday, but then you would really have to beat Bethel at home. And then, of course, you would have the common opponent tiebreakers coming into play. If Huntington loses to Bethel the second time next Wednesday, and Indiana Wesleyan is somehow, and of course, I'm a firm believer in miracles, so obviously a miracle can happen. And then you would have, if Indiana Wesleyan, by a miracle, could beat Bethel at home next Saturday, and Huntington lose to Bethel next Wednesday, then if Mount Vernon's, if Indiana Wesleyan's able to beat Huntington Saturday, is able to beat Bethel next Saturday, then Indiana Wesleyan, if they finish tied with Huntington, Indiana Wesleyan would be ahead of them because of the common opponent tiebreaker with upsetting Bethel. So obviously, a lot can happen in these last 9 games, but most importantly for Indiana Wesleyan, they really need to have the win on the road against Spring Arbor on February 5th, and then if they finish tied, then Indiana Wesleyan would be ahead of them because of the common opponent tiebreaker. So there's going to be a lot to cover in the coming weeks and the closing stretch, I should say, of this season. So make sure that you subscribe to my channel. feel free to like this video, leave me a comment down below, and most of all, most importantly, please subscribe so you are the first to be notified of these videos that I upload, because there's going to be a lot to talk about, like I said, in these next several weeks as we wind down the regular season. And then, of course, then we have the league tournament that I'll be recapping, and then, of course, we'll have the national tournament, at least the open, and I'll just cover, if any Crossroads League team makes the national tournament, I will just be covering the Crossroads League teams that end up making the national tournament. So make sure that you are tuned in for that as well, because there's, I'm sure, going to be a lot to cover once we get into that here in the next couple weeks as well. And again, I hope to recap both sides, men and women, next Thursday, recapping the games from this upcoming Saturday, and then, of course, next Wednesday as well. So I'm definitely excited. We got the second half of conference play coming up, and it's hard to believe, again, this is my third episode talking about the men and women, and of course next week it'll be my fourth episode, and my first episode recapping the first games of officially the second half of conference, so that's something to get pumped about as well. So I hope you'll continue to tune in for that, and thanks so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.